While we can't speak directly to our ancient ancestors to learn about their lives, they've left behind a wealth of artifacts that offer us valuable insights into their world. Remarkable discoveries are made almost every day, and some are truly extraordinary, ranging from breathtaking sculptures to enigmatic pieces of art. In this video, we've compiled some of the most fascinating and thought-provoking archaeological finds from the ancient past. The archaeological site of Pompeii in Italy is every bit as full of ancient treasure and wonder as any Egyptian site, and is still giving up its secrets today, many years after its discovery and initial excavation. One of the most eye-catching finds from Pompeii in recent times is this stunning and highly detailed fresco of two gladiators engaged in combat. It's around 2,000 years old, and experts think that it might once have been a decorative item on the wall of a local tavern, probably put there for the same reason that bars and pubs near you have pictures of sports stars on the wall. One of the gladiators, the one who is seemingly on the verge of defeat given the fact that his shield is on the ground, is wearing a Thracian style of dress. The other is a more classic murmillo. Battles between these two types of gladiators were a popular sporting attraction at the time. A barracks has been found very close to the newly located site of this tavern in Pompeii's Regio 5 region, and so it might be that this is where the soldiers came to drink and talk during their time off. The Hallaton helmet was named after the place it was found in the year 2000, an archaeological dig site close to Hallaton in the English county of Leicestershire. The ornately decorated headwear, crafted from iron, is a Roman cavalry parade helmet, and would once have been coated in silver with some gold leaf accessories to top it off. The team of experts has since scoured the area and concluded that it was once a large Iron Age shrine. After almost a decade of careful conservation and restoration, it's now on display to the public at the British Museum. When it was found, it was smashed into pieces and had rusted and corroded. But you'd never know that from looking at it now. Given the complexity of the design, it's probable that it was used in ceremonies and displays more than it was used in battle. But it's equally possible that it was taken and used by an ancient Briton who fought alongside Roman forces during the Roman conquest of Britain. In other words, it might have belonged to a traitor. We know that the ancient Romans were very fond of public baths. They built them almost everywhere they went, and they were presumably considered to be one of the luxuries of the Roman standard of life. They weren't the only ancient culture to enjoy them, though. The ancient Chinese also enjoyed luxury baths, and they were building them at around the same time. Here's a set of them that were discovered in Xi'an in northwest China in 2017. The site contains 3 different baths, along with an ancient fireplace that would have been used to keep the water heated. There's even a sewage outflow pipe and the remains of what would once have been beautiful tiling work on the walls. Presumably, had they not been abandoned and built over centuries ago, they would still be perfectly serviceable and quite luxurious today. Experts in ancient Chinese culture have pointed out the similarity between the baths and some further examples found closer to the imperial palace of Xianyang, which was the capital city of China during the Qin dynasty. These more recently discovered baths seem to be even older though, and so they may have inspired the design of those found close to the palace. Our next discovery comes from Germany, where a 19-year-old intern called Nico Kalman, working on one of his first ever archaeological digs, made the find of a lifetime. He was part of a team exploring an ancient burial ground in the west of the country at a site called Halton am See. 2,000 years ago, it was a Roman military camp, and one of the soldiers who was stationed there went to his grave with a magnificent silver dagger for Nico to find all these years later. It was still in its sheath when it came out of the ground, but it was so corroded and rusty that it looked a little bit like a chicken tender, albeit not one that you'd ever want to eat. It took many months for a team of experts to treat and restore the weapon, but when they did, it was a sight to behold. The perfectly preserved sheath is decorated with gemstones, and the weapon is still completely intact. Many other Roman weapons have been found at the site, but none of them were in such good condition as this. Bettina Tremmel, the senior archaeologist, working on the dig, says discoveries like this almost never happen, and when they do, they're considered to be near miracles. Terms of drought can bring trouble for the areas afflicted by them, especially when vital water supplies evaporate. They can also sometimes uncover long-forgotten relics, though. During summer 2019, when Iraq was hit by a particularly harsh drought and the water levels of the Mosul Dam dropped sharply, the remains of a 3,400-year-old palace in the Kurdistan region of the country were revealed for the first time in living memory. The existence of the palace was first identified during 2010, but a close inspection of the ruins was impossible at the time because of the water. Excitingly, it's now thought that this is a relic of the Mitanni Empire, one of the least understood and least known empires in the region's past. The palace would have once stood on the banks of a river in the area and had mud brick walls over 6 feet thick to stave off the risk of flooding. Wall paintings in faded shades of red and blue have now been discovered inside, along with 10 clay tablets upon which cuneiform inscriptions have been written. We're now waiting on a translation of those inscriptions, which will hopefully tell us more about the palace and the people who lived in it. It might look a little bit like a wine cork to the untrained eye, but this ancient limestone carving served a far more noble purpose. The inch-long cylinder is around 4,000 years old and is actually a stamp that would have worked by being dipped in an ink-like substance and then rolled across parchment, leaves, or surfaces to create an image of animals playing together with a human figure at their center. The stamp has been named the Verdar, taken from a word from the ancient world that means guardian, and was found in Iran several years ago. Now, so many thousands of years after it was created by a skilled craftsman, it's going to have a new purpose. The image contained on the stamp has become the symbol of Iran's Department of Environment, based on the fact that the human in the image appears to have a friendly, caring attitude toward lions, leopards, and other creatures around him. It challenges the idea that all of our ancient ancestors were hunters and viewed animals as little more than a source of food. During February 2020, archaeologists found a Neolithic well in Eastern Europe. That would have been an exciting discovery on its own, but this well is just a little more exciting than your average Neolithic discovery. That's because, at 7,000 years old, it's thought to be the oldest wooden structure ever found anywhere in the world. The well is on old farmland in what's now Czechia and was fashioned out of oak, somewhere around 5200 BCE, if the results of dendrochronological dating are to be believed. Wood doesn't last as well as stone, and so anything this old made of wood usually rots away long before archaeologists have had a chance to discover it. Even the act of discovery may have put this well at risk. It's only lasted this long because it spent the majority of the last 7,000 years underwater. Now it's exposed to the air, and preservation work will have to be performed quickly to protect it from the risk of disintegration. This square well is built under corner posts, which have grooves to hold planks in place, which is an impressive achievement in terms of precision design for a culture working mostly with stone or bone tools. That's impressive carpentry skill for the Neolithic era. The tale of the Tiskalski princess is one that's wrapped in so much mystery that it's become a myth, and finding any precise details about it is difficult. Here's what we can tell you about it. In September 1969, coal miners working in a village called Rozalchik came across a marble sarcophagus at a depth of more than 200 feet below ground. They didn't know it yet, but they had stumbled across the biggest historical puzzle in the history of Siberia. It was covered in strange markings and precision-engineered to the point where the casket lid was still perfectly sealed. Its existence ought to have been impossible. The coal seam it was found inside appeared to have been undisturbed for 800 million years. No adequate explanation has ever been found, and over time further legends have grown around the sarcophagus. Some say that it was eventually opened and contained the perfectly preserved body of a young, beautiful, blonde-haired and blue-eyed woman immersed in some kind of clear liquid. No photographs exist to support the claim, and yet the sarcophagus has now mysteriously disappeared. We wonder why. The ancient Romans had a god for almost any occasion and any activity, and if you're fond of the occasional glass of wine, your favorite of them would probably have been Dionysus. He was the wine god, according to the ancient Roman customs and beliefs, and a large marble sculpture of the god's head was found built into a medieval Roman wall in Rome in 2019. It's likely that the placement of the head inside the wall wasn't an act of reverence or worship. Ancient statues were often recycled as building materials during the time of the Roman Empire, and so if the statue no longer had any purpose, it would probably have been reclaimed. The head almost certainly once had a body to go with it, and the scraped-out eyes suggest that there were once precious stones within the sockets. Presumably, when it was a complete piece around 2,000 years ago, it would have been incredibly beautiful. Although it's made of white marble, experts think that it may have been painted in the past, and they're now checking the area for the rest of the statue to confirm their theory. Around 12 miles to the southwest of Cajamarca in Peru, you'll find the mysterious site of Cumbermeyo. This ancient stone construction, seemingly an aqueduct, stretches on for 5 miles and is thought to have been built by a civilization that predates the Inca people by some 3,500 years ago. It's a little primitive, but it's perfectly equipped to serve its purpose, collecting watershed and redirecting it to the Pacific Ocean. It might even be the oldest human-made structure in the whole Southern American continent. At various points along the 5-mile stretch, there are petroglyphs and other carvings, but it's impossible for us to deduce what they're supposed to say or mean without further information. And we don't know where to look for that information. The zigzag patterns carved into the bedrock were probably put there to slow the flow of the water down, perhaps filtering out silt and cleansing the water for drinking and bathing purposes. If we knew who built it and what happened to them, we might have more answers. But for now, it's an anomaly, unlike anything else anywhere near it. At the start of this video, we mentioned that ancient Egyptian burial sites still turn up within the country with alarming regularity. Sometimes they're so enormous that it's incredible that nobody has come across them before now. That's definitely the case with this network of 800 tombs that were found at Lieshed in 2018. It's one of the largest Middle Kingdom burial sites ever discovered, and the people interred there passed away around 4,000 years ago. A pair of pyramids to the north and south of the site gave away its historical significance years ago, but nobody of our era had ever dug this far down until recently. Unfortunately, it would seem that the teams of experts who found the tombs weren't the first to open them. At some point in the distant past, the majority of the tombs had been raided, but that doesn't mean that we can't learn anything from them, as they don't belong to nobles or royals. They can tell us a lot about how the average ancient Egyptians of this period lived and died. In this case, families appear to have been entombed together in private vaults containing space for 8 burials. If you like historical artifacts with grand titles, this one should appeal to you. It's the mysterious mocha icon of the iguana, companion to the sky god Wrinkleface. It's quite a lengthy name, but then iguana was a very important symbol in the myths and legends of the Mocha people. It, and the wrinkled face deity it appears to protect, are often found as companion pieces in Mocha art and ceramics. Around 2,000 years ago, the Mocha ruled the northernmost reaches of Peru, building mud brick pyramids and aqueducts across their territory. They were advanced metalworkers and jewelers, but didn't have written language, and so left little behind that allows us to get to know them or their culture. In this carvings and others like it, though, the iguana is always shown watching Wrinkleface, rather than turning its back to him, and sometimes has a vulture as a headdress. It might even be possible that the iguana was itself a god, although given the plethora of iguanas that would exist in the area at the time, that seems unlikely. We also wish we had a better name for the god than Wrinkleface. We understand that fish-cut sauce may not be for everyone, so if that didn't whet your appetite, how about this 2,000-year-old lump of butter? We're reliably informed that it still contains plenty of flavor, despite sitting out the centuries, in an Irish fog before being unearthed in 2016. And if you were feeling especially adventurous, it would still be edible. A man named Jack Conway was digging up peat moss to burn in the winter for heat near his home in County Meath, where he came across the find and took it to the nearby Cabin County Museum, who identified it as ancient butter. Opinions vary about who so-called bog butter is often found in locations like this. Some people think it was put there as an offering of appeasement to ancient gods, while others think it might have been a deliberate act of food processing designed to change the butter's chemical composition and enhance the taste. The lack of oxygen and high levels of acid inside the pat box are perfect for preserving food, so storage is another option. Although we still don't think we'd be brave enough to try it. We're staying in Peru for a moment because the country is covered in ancient and hard-to-explain wonders. As another example, here's the archaeological site known as Quilarumayok, not far from Cusco. It's every bit as historical significant as Machu Picchu, and yet it receives a tiny fraction of the visitor numbers. The name translates into English as the place of moon rocks, but that doesn't offer a full explanation of what you'll find at the site. We don't know who made these decorative crescent designs in the stone, but we can say with some certainty that it wasn't the Inca. They were very skilled with stonework, but they weren't this good. It's perhaps more likely that it was the Hananpacha people, but that's just an informed guess. We'll never know for sure. If the carving has or had a purpose, it was probably a megalithic sun calendar used in connection with rituals, and perhaps also to provide a tranquil, sacred space for meditation and reflection. The quality of the finish, still so smooth after thousands of years, is incredible. To add to the mystery, there's no sign of chipping or chisel work anywhere on the rock. How is it made? We don't have a clue. If you're someone who likes to have a little sauce on your fries or your meat, you might be interested to know that your enthusiasm for condiments was shared by people living thousands of years ago. During the days of the Roman Empire, a fish sauce called garum was just as popular as an accompaniment to meals as ketchup is today. We now know a little more about how and where it was manufactured, thanks to a discovery of a garum production facility just outside Ashkelon in southern Israel in late 2019. The site contains huge vasts, jars for storage, and pools that would have been used to house the fish that eventually ended up in the sauce. The manufacturing process would likely have created a foul smell, which explains why the site was around 1 mile away from the town that it probably served. Fish guts would be fermented in the vats for months, and then layered between herbs and salt before being strained into creating garum. The ancient Greek documents from 2,500 years ago contain references to trading garum, so enthusiasm for the sauce spread far and wide from its Roman origins. The Roman Empire once spanned much of what's now modern Europe, but very few countries did better under the Romans than ancient Britain. The British may not have enjoyed being conquered by the Romans, but they got a lot of excellent roads, facilities, and architecture out of the deal. London, under Roman rule, was a thriving market town, and there are still thousands of Roman relics in the ground below England's capital city waiting to be found. In the middle of 2016, the archaeological world was ablaze with excitement about a set of 2,000-year-old handwritten documents that had been discovered embedded in London's mud. We have construction workers to thank for the discovery. They were digging out the foundations for Bloomberg's new headquarters there when they found the documents. Over 400 wooden tablets have since been extracted and contain references to new laws, receipts for deliveries of food and wine, and an IOU note from one freed slave to another promising to repay a debt of 105 denarii. That must be the oldest IOU in the world. We wonder if the debt was ever settled. It wasn't just people who were afforded lavish ceremonial burials during the times of antiquity. Powerful warriors and leaders were sometimes buried with horses and carriages to serve them during the afterlife. Unfortunately for the horses, they were often still alive when they were entombed. That explains why these horse skeletons excavated in Bulgaria in 2013 as part of a 2,500-year-old tomb were still standing up when they were discovered. The tomb is thought to be Thracian and was found in a village called Svastari in the northeast of the country. There have been other Thracian carriage burials discovered in Bulgaria in the past, but none that look quite like this one, which still contained many of the decorative items that the human occupant was buried with. The majority of Thracian tombs were raided by looters centuries ago, So discoveries of unspoiled ones like this happen very rarely. The remains of harnesses were found still attached to the heads of the horses, suggesting their last act may have been to pull the carriage into position in the grave before they were buried. Many people believed that in ancient times, perhaps even millions of years ago, giant humans once lived on Earth. Most people are unaware of the stories, and scientists dismiss such stories as nonsense, but occasionally evidence of their existence appears. And the scientists are left trying to come up with a logical explanation. We wonder how they might explain this. This is Michael Tellinger, stood next to a gigantic human footprint embedded in granite in Swaziland. The footprint, almost 50 inches long, is estimated to be about 200 million years ago. Given the familiar shape of the footprint and the appearance of what appeared to be toe shapes at its end, Challenger is in no doubt that this is genuine artifact, and therefore it represents the proof that scientists have been waiting for. Scientists, however, say that it only looks like a foot because people want to see a foot there, and that is nothing more than natural formation that happened by chance. It's hard to be totally convinced by the scientific explanation. How can anyone look at this and say it isn't a footprint? Fashions change all the time, and so it's not all that unlikely that you'd see a shoe like this on the foot of a model taking to the runways in Paris, London, Milan, or New York. This is no recent design, though. It's an incredibly well-preserved example of Roman footwear from 2,000 years ago. It survived the passing of the centuries in such good condition, largely because it had been at the bottom of a well at the site of the Solberg Fort in Germany, until its discovery in 19th century. It's thought that the Romans were the first to design shoes that encased the entire foot like this. Prior to that, sandals were the only widely popular form of footwear. It even has laces, and the laces are still attached after all these years. The Solberg Fort was built somewhere around the year 90 to protect the expanding Roman Empire from advances by hordes of Germanic tribes. And so it's likely that the shoe belonged to the wife of a soldier who was stationed there. At first glance, this might look like a beautifully decorated pearl or a piece of jewelry. And in fact, you could use it as jewelry if you wanted to. But that would be doing this incredibly rare artifact a disservice. It's a tiny chunk of amber, and inside it is the smallest dinosaur ever discovered. Retrieved from a site in the north of Myanmar, this tiny skull of the bird-like creature has been preserved for almost 100 million years. Experts say that the full-sized creature would likely have been around the same size as the bee hummingbird, which is the smallest living bird that exists today. It would weigh only 2 grams, so small it might not even register on your bathroom scales. The strange structure of the animal's eyes would have bulged out of his head and made it appear terrifying, prompted Professor Ginge May O'Connor. Describe it as the single weirdest fossil she's ever encountered, to make it even stranger. Despite being so tiny, its jaw is packed full of sharp teeth. That suggests it was a predator. We can only assume that it hunted insects. The only thing we know for sure about Old Krogan Man, the name given to the body of an Iron Age body found in an Irish bog in 2003, is that he met with a violent end, and that his end came around 2,000 years ago. He was likely to be in his early 20s at the time, and at around 6 foot 6 inches tall, he would have towered over almost all of his peers. Study of his remains has confirmed that not only was he decapitated and cleaved in two, he also suffered a stab wound to the torso on his way to the grave. Despite all the violence, he probably wasn't a warrior. His nails were manicured. His stomach contents revealed he enjoyed a rich diet of meat, wheat, and buttermilk, suggesting he was of high status. The theory of his nobility is seemingly backed up by the presence of a decorative leather band that was tied around one of his arms. The ancient hill above the bog was once used for coronation ceremonies of ancient leaders in Ireland. So he might even have been a king who was sacrificed by his subjects because of a poor harvest or prolonged poor weather conditions. Some discoveries seem to be too good to be true. Either the story behind them is too improbable to have happened in reality, or a discovered artifact is in too good a condition not to be a forgery. That was the case when an Israeli swimmer presented the world with what's claimed to be an ancient Egyptian anchor that he claims he found on the seafloor during his morning swim. It's perfectly preserved, and its whole surface is etched with authentic-looking hieroglyphs. But several Egyptologists have accused him of faking his find. He has supporters, though, including Shirley Ben-Dor-Evian of the Israel Museum, who says that it's a genuine 3,400-year-old artifact. Anchors like this are believed to have been in common use on Egyptian ships during the Bronze Age, and the hole at the top used to secure a rope and thereby hold the ship in place. Very few are ever found, though, and certainly never in such immaculate condition. If this truly is the real thing, why is it so clean and whole when every other anchor has long since crumbled or cracked? There are so many ancient artifacts buried in Egypt that we may never find all of them. Even though hundreds of archaeological sites in the country have been fully excavated over the years, there's always a new one for experts to sink their teeth into. And a sarcophagus that turned up at a construction site in Alexandria in December 2019 is the latest great example. The 2,000-year-old black sarcophagus dates back to the Ptolemaic period and was found 16 feet below the ground by workers from the Supreme Council of Antiquities in City Garber as they built new offices in the area. The coffin is still sealed, but a heavily weathered bust found alongside it might have provided a clue as to who the occupant might be if it were in better condition. Sadly, time and nature have eroded the bust very badly. Only wealthy people from that era would have been buried in such a heavy black granite sarcophagus. So when the 15-ton lid of the casket is finally lifted away, we may find that it contains the remains of a long-lost leader. Don't hold your breath waiting to find out, though. Full excavation may take 5 years. If the Egyptian anchor is a little contentious, the Mask of La Roche-Cotard is downright controversial. Also known as the Mousterian proto-figurine, some scientists and historians refuse to recognize that this is a historic artifact at all. If it's real, it's a priceless piece of Neanderthal art that was crafted around 33,000 years ago and then left at the entrance of La Roche-Cotard cave on the banks of the Loire River in France until it was finally discovered in 1975. 2. Its supporters. The flint has been deliberately shaped to resemble the upper part of a humanoid face, with a bone that's been forced through a hole in the stones designed to represent eyes. Detractors say that seeing a face in the rock is just wishful thinking, and although they agree that the placement of the bones means that the object was created deliberately, it was likely to have had a purpose that was practical rather than decorative. They have a reason for sticking to that belief, though. If we accept that Neanderthals created art, it changes everything we think we know about them. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching and see you soon.